Welcome to Season 2 of Talk Me Healthy. Each month, we invite a guest to explore a topic related to healthy living. They share their expertise, personal stories, and we learn from them how they turned their passion and knowledge into practical tips that you can use now to improve your health. I'm your host, Sherrie Keating, founder of Diabetes Care Consulting. My goal is that you will hear something each show that will motivate you to make a small change towards living a healthier, happier life. Hello and welcome to Talk Me Healthy. My name is Sherrie Keating and I'm your host. In today's show, we are going to inspire and educate you. We're going to be talking about a rare genetic eye disorder called retinitis pigmentosa, and it affects about 4,000 people. And I have a guest here who unfortunately has this condition, but she has taken her diagnosis and her life changes and is helping people that have vision impairments and those that don't, to teach them how to help people with vision impairments. So I'm so excited to welcome her. Her name is attorney Liz Myska. And thank you, Liz, for coming on the show and sharing your personal story and, inspiring other people. Because when I read your story, I was like, wow, this is incredible woman. And so I'm excited for the viewers to hear your story and to see what you've done with this diagnosis and how your life has changed for the better.
Well, thank you, Sherrie, for the opportunity, because being a lawyer, I love to talk, and I feel I have something to offer, and I feel I have something that can make a difference in other people's lives, whether they're sighted or VIPs, visually impaired people like myself.
Mm-hmm. So you're a lawyer.
I am.
And so this disease, this disease is normally, as I was reading from the information that you sent me, it's normally a disease of childhood.
Exactly. Again, when I was diagnosed 2005, I had never heard of retinitis pigmentosa, RP. And I thought, this couldn't possibly be happening to me. So, because usually RP is hereditary, so that usually there is a family member, whether it's a sibling or a parent or a grandparent or an aunt and uncle that has it. And in my case, it's atypical, and it's adult onset. And again, it impacted me when you mentioned me being a lawyer. My practice at the time was real estate driven. In other words, I was a real estate attorney, conveyancing attorney. I would represent buyers and sellers and lenders in residential transactions. But most of my practice depended upon me driving a car. So when I was diagnosed in 2005, I thought, my heart stopped. How am I going to make a living if I can't drive a car? I wasn't deemed legally blind in 2005. It wasn't until 2008 that I was deemed legally blind. So you're going to ask me, did I continue to drive a car? Yes, I did.
I wasn't going to ask you, but
I did. But I definitely curtailed my driving because it was becoming more and more obvious to me that I couldn't see. And when I say I couldn't see, RP has to do with your side or your peripheral vision as opposed to your central vision. So again, when you're driving a car, you're looking forward, but you also need to have, full view so that you can see. If you're stopped at a crosswalk, you can see someone start across before they get in front of your car. And it was becoming such that I couldn't, my visual field was that narrow that I couldn't see it.
Wow.
So I would only drive. And again, I had a driver's license, and I was not breaking the law because I was not legally blind or blind. I only drove under perfect conditions, which was never when children would be, in a crosswalk. I would only really drive in the country and only during daylight because RP also has to do with your light-dark sensitivity. And it first manifested itself with night blindness. I was driving, and I remember this vividly, So if you'll indulge me, it was January, and I had to go up to Fitchburg, to the courthouse in Fitchburg, and then I was driving during the day, and then I drove through Barrie out to Ware, Massachusetts. But in the wintertime, the sun sets at 4 o'clock in the afternoon, and I thought, oh, I'm just going to wend my way. I'm not going to take a highway. So I was out in Barrie, and it got dark, and I couldn't see the road. and fortunately, there was a car in front of me that I was following its taillights, but then he turned off. So I could feel my heart pumping, like, oh no, I know. And I was meeting another lawyer out in Ware. We were seeing clients together, and then we were going to have dinner, and then I was going to come back. And I asked her if I could follow her car back to the turnpike, because driving on the turnpike was easy, because again, it was all straight and it was well lit. Right. But driving those side roads, and that was the first time it hit me that, Liz, you have an issue here. That was early 2000, say 2001, 2002. I had cataract surgery in the year 2000. And that's, again, my own impression, unscientific, that it was the cataract surgery that resulted in, wiggling things around up there, that because I had a car accident when I was 5. So I'd already had the blunt trauma to the head. And then when I had the cataract surgery, I think it exacerbated and it accelerated the deterioration of the rods and the cones.
And so this disease, so what it is essentially is, from what I've read, is that it has to do with those rods and cones, which are photoreceptor cells in the eye, and the cells are actually destroyed.
They burn out like little batteries.
And so it's a genetic, and they don't know the reason?
Well, with me, again, they think the blunt trauma to my head when I was in the car accident when I was 5. Wow. Because my parents, I grew up in Holden, by the way. My parents took me to an optometrist because I was about to start school after the car accident, and he told them, my parents, that I would have vision issues. And I really, again, they didn't really manifest themselves until I had the cataract surgery. Now, thinking back, when I was a child, when I went to school, I automatically got glasses, and I considered glasses. And if you're wearing glasses, Sherrie, I apologize, but I considered I considered glasses, a conspiracy to make me ugly. I was just like, I am not going to wear these things.
Liz.
You're welcome. You're welcome. But so all my classmates, got rid of their glasses as they aged. Mine kept getting thicker and thicker and thicker. And then when I was a teenager, I got contact lenses, and literally my optometrist had to hold my head in place because I was so squeamish about putting something into my eye.
I am too. That's why I have these other glasses.
But anyway, so I operated as a sighted person from the time I was, 5 years old until I was middle-aged. I'll just say middle-aged in 2000.
So what a life change for you. It was So can you explain to me the difference between somebody who's legally blind and somebody who is actually blind? Because the viewers may not understand that. And for me, what I think that means is that when you're legally blind, your vision is very impaired, but you can still see some things. But when you're blind, you can't see anything. Is that
total
accurate?
Blindness is rare. In other words, total darkness is rare.
Okay.
But the legal blindness, and I'm only going to talk about this from the legal aspect. It has to do with the 20/20 thing, and it has to do with the visual field. And in my case, it's the visual field. So my visual field is narrowing. So a normal eye, I don't know what the visual field is because I'm not a scientist. But my visual field now is probably, I can't even see my hands here. So what's that? Maybe 4 inches?
No, that's probably more like 12.
Well, okay, all right.
Me
okay.
So my question, so what can you see?
Well, it's very interesting because people, again, sighted people will ask me that. I cannot see anything clearly anymore. Everything is cloudy and wispy, but in a very nice way. In other words, nothing is is clear and crisp and distinct.
So like outlines you're talking about.
I can see shapes.
Shapes.
But the other side of the coin is I can't see blemishes. I can't see glasses. I can't see gray hair. I can't see.
Well, that can be.
I know, really.
Thing.
So right. So I think of it as like a mirror. So it's the same thing with me. It's like, oh, I can't see that in somebody else. So everything is very gauzy looking and beautiful.
Wow.
And you asked about the blindness and the legal blindness. I am just so privileged to have had some sight because one of the things that I made it mandatory for me, I wanted to meet and pal with people who had been doing this a lot longer than I had. And again, meeting visually impaired people is difficult. You're going to say, well, why? Well, because we don't know we're in the room. In other words, when you can't see, you don't know, oh, Sally across the hall is visually impaired. There's the stigma of you don't want to fess up, but there's also you can't make your way independently across a crowded room to meet someone. You may know someone, you hear their voice, but you can't get to them. So oftentimes we miss the social interactions amongst the VIPs, the visually impaired people, because we're not given the opportunity. So my mission, once I did become legally blind, was to befriend people who, as I said, been doing this a lot longer than I have. So amongst my very best friends now are people with RP, some of whom have hereditary RP and some of whom have adult onset RP like me. And we share best practices, which is, it's so wonderful to be able to call someone up when you mention makeup and say, how do you put your mascara on
Right,
when you can't see your eye?
Like I was thinking about that this morning as I was getting ready. I'm thinking now, how does Liz
how do you
put
do
on her
this?
makeup? Because I can't see without my glasses to put my makeup. So I have that magnifying, makeup mirror that is, so many times magnifying.
Yeah, but then you're looking at all those crevices and those cracks.
Right.
Like,
so
I
couldn't do my makeup without it. So how do you do those kind of things? That you know what? So it must be hard transitioning from being able to see everything and then not being able to see, and then trying to figure out, well, how am I going to do what I used to do and have a quality of life and still look at your attitude. It amazes me that you're laughing and you're happy. And how does that happen?
Well, I have good genes from the standpoint that I come from hardy stock, I guess, and being Irish, I know it's like I am dogged, I am persistent, I am not going to let anything defeat me.
Good for you.
Nevertheless, when I was diagnosed, but more so when I became legally blind, those were death knells. I mean, in the terms of my sighted life. And again, looking back 10 years, I didn't know what was going to become of me. And now it's like there are so many possibilities. I just feel so delighted. And again, I don't want to sound like Pollyanna, but this has happened to me because I think of this as an opportunity. I think of this as there are others out there who have been so decimated by their vision loss. They can't pick themselves up.
Right.
And I don't want them to say, well, I want to be, a Liz Myska clone. No, you have to be your own person. But you need that kind of assistance. You need that kind of role model. And again, by befriending my fellow compatriots, we buoy each other up. We buck each other up. And some of us are good at some things and some of us are good at other things. But utilizing our senses other than our eyesight. You mentioned the panic stricken. When I first started losing my sight, I would panic because I would look into my handbag and I couldn't see anything that's in there. And I would be saying, oh no, I can't see it. And then I'd be like, okay, and I could feel the panic rising, and it's like, oh no, it's getting worse. Now it's like, I can't see in there at all. But it's like, Liz, you can stick your hand in there. You know what's in your purse. You put your stuff in your purse. You know there's a comb. You know there's a wallet. You know that there's sunglasses. So you don't need to see that. Use your hands. Use your other senses. And that's been something that one of my very, very best friends, who again has RP and is totally blind, we're like the Bobbsey twins, she and I. She has taught me so much about seeing with my hands and my feet. So in other words, using your hands to explore a surface or explore explore food, so that and not having somebody say it's a because again, I think sighted people, they want to jump in, they want to help, but they kind of cut you off at the knees because they're panic stricken for you too. And usually family members are worse because they remember you as sighted and they're saying, oh my gosh, Liz can't do what she used to do. And that makes you feel badly about yourself, and that makes you say, I'm not going to put myself in that position. I'm not going to expose myself to that kind of criticism and self-critique. So as a result, again, many visually impaired people isolate themselves and to their detriment, because then depression sets in, then obesity sets in, and then all the other, adverse health factors kick in. So in befriending my fellow VIPs and seeing what their lives were like, and some were very active, but some were not. And some were lamenting the loss. And again, it's very real.
Right, so you have to go through the stages anyways. It's just like losing somebody that you love. You've lost your previous life. So now you need to go through that process in order to accept and move forward.
But people treat you differently too. I mean, it's not, and I know from when I started learning how to use the cane, I was very self-conscious. I did not want to be seen in public with the white cane because I knew, or I thought I knew, as a sighted person, when I was a sighted person, that means you're blind. And again, all those preconceived notions of what blindness is. And again, my preconceived notions was if you're blind, you see nothing. That you can do nothing, that you're going to be pitied, and you are going to be parodied, and you are going to sit in the corner and be a complainer. And I thought, well, this is not me. And so again, I wanted to seek something more positive, and that's why after I completed it's called orientation and mobility, O&M training, where you learn how to use the white cane. Again, who knew? I didn't know that you had to be taught by somebody, an instructor.
And who taught you? Is there an organization that...
Well, interesting, and again, I didn't know any of the players, and I didn't know any of the organizations. So I'm just going to deviate for a second.
Okay.
Being a lawyer, people think, well, lawyers know it all. No, we don't know it all, but we know where to find answers. We're really good at research. So, and research may mean that we, provide the answer for a client, or that we refer the client to a clinician, to a social worker, to a psychologist, to another resource. So when I became legally blind, that's when all of the service organizations, the Commission for the Blind, which is the state agency, the Massachusetts Association for the Blind, which is a nonprofit that services not only legally blind and blind, but low vision population too. That's when they all came marching in with their wares. And again, I was still so decimated by the pronouncement of legal blindness. I was rocked back on my heels. So I was like, I'm not listening, but I was information gathering. And then when I was able to parse through and kind of come to terms with, Liz, this is permanent. Your life will never be the same again. That's when I started to say, well, what else is out there? And that's when I started to say, well, who else is out there? Who can help me along in my journey? So that's when I discovered the support groups. And that's when I discovered the organizations of just blind individuals nationwide and internationally. But like in any human endeavor, there are always factions, and there are always militants in these, and so I like to call myself unaffiliated and non-denominational because I want to take in all comers. I don't want people to say, well, Liz, you're not really blind because you can still see. And I don't want people to say, well, you're not really blind because you're legally blind. It's like, really? I want to tout the commonalities, not the distinctions, not the differences.
So you're actually using your experience and formed a company, Visions Consulting L3C, I believe, and you're educating people. But what I found interesting about your company is that your mission was actually to help people that are not vision impaired.
Exactly.
To help teach them how to help people that are visually impaired. I thought that was very interesting. So why is that?
Well, again, what I noticed even after I learned how to use the cane was that people treated me differently. Either they patronized me. Oftentimes they would talk loudly as though I was deaf.
Because I just don't know what to do.
Exactly. Bingo. You hit it on the head. It was uncomfortable for them. It was awkward for them. And again, I'm not trying to mock that. I understood that because I harkened back to when I was sighted and what I would have done to try to help a blind person. I would have rushed up and again, seize them, put my hands on them and say, how can I help you? But not knowing how to render help. And so in thinking through after, after again, feeling that I had, gotten my feet wet with learning the skills, the blind skills and befriending other blind people, I said, now I want to turn the tables and I want to teach the sighted how they can help. And in some instances, assistance is appropriate, and some instances it's not. So a lot of times it's language. For instance, as an example, I will be standing at an intersection in downtown Worcester where I live, and I can still see at a cross signal, I can still see the red hand of the little white man, to signal that, whether or not it's an audible signal. But inevitably, I'll be standing there, and either a driver will come along and honk the horn as though to tell me, go, or somebody will roll down the window and say, it's okay to cross, even though it's like, no, it's not, or somebody will come zipping up behind me. And all of a sudden, I am being, escorted, so to speak, across the street without anyone asking my permission.
That must be scary.
It is very scary. And I find medical community, there's this presumption that, well, I'm a nurse, I'm a physician, I know everything. They automatically put their hands on you without saying, may I touch you, or may I assist you? So again, I didn't found the company, to mock people, but I wanted people to understand, such as nurses, such as social workers, such as clinicians, how do you properly seat a visually impaired person? How do you properly assist, as a sighted guide, instead of how do you put somebody in a car? How do you assist somebody coming out of a car, instead of feeling like I'm being seized and placed like an object, Well, I should have taken your classes before you came in today, because as I'm escorting you down the hall, I'm like, yes, we're going down the hall. And you're like, down means I'm going down. I'm like, no, we're just walking down the hall. But wording is really very important, as I found out today. Well, description.
And I failed the course. So
No.
I need to sign up for a new one.
You don't know what you don't know.
Right.
So one of my iterations is I started a walking as an exercise with a student from the optometry school in Worcester. I'm going to say his name. I won't say his whole name. He has since graduated. But Hans he was a second year optometry student. He had seen me speak at City Hall. He contacted me the summer between his second and third year, and he himself, sighted, was an athlete, and he wanted to work with blind athletes. And I said, well, Hans, there's not a lot of blind athletes, but there's a lot of blind ordinary. So let's devise an activity that everyone can do. Because another thing that I had noticed was there are a handful of blind elite who have, who are extraordinary, who have climbed Mount Everest, who have competed in the Paralympics. But to throw that up as a role model to someone who is just grappling with their blindness, whether it's been a lifelong journey or a new journey, that just seems unattainable. So I wanted to encourage people to participate, visually impaired people to participate, and sighted people to participate, so that there's not this gulf and this gap between the two populations. And so as a result of Hans and his fellow students, and also me, luring mostly my friends, but ultimately strangers, to learn sighted guide techniques, I was also teaching social skills, relationship building, so that, again, someone in the public, when they're going to the theater, might see a person with a white cane and come up and say, do you need assistance? And actually be able to render assistance, as opposed to the push me, pull you, plop you down, using verbiage, such as clock face. We are going, as we're going straight, we're going
like
12 o'clock.
12 o'clock, yes.
We're going to the right, we're going to 3 o'clock. In a restaurant, your glass of wine is at your 1 o'clock.
Okay.
Little things like that assist us as visually impaired people to become more a part of mainstream society, as opposed to be segregated, even though that's well-intentioned. But again, we feel segregated.
Right. So would you be interested? I know our show is coming to a close, and there's just so many things that I haven't even had a chance to talk to you. Can you come back and actually demonstrate for
Absolutely.
us some techniques that you were trying to teach me, which I failed at? So some techniques that will help people to help visually impaired people.
Absolutely.
I think that would be wonderful if we actually had a time where you could actually demonstrate and show us the 12 o'clock, 1 o'clock, and just different words and how we need to help you walk and get into it. Those kind of simple things that will make your life easier, and that you won't feel like we're just taking over and we're treating you the way you deserve to be treated.
Absolutely.
So
I would love that.
So we're definitely going to have you back, because our 30 minutes just flew by.
I know, really.
And I have a list of questions this long, and I didn't get a chance to ask. But you know what? I love the fact that you shared your story and what you've had to go through. And I love the fact that you are so positive, and what you're doing to help other people understand both being visually impaired, as well as helping those to understand how to care for or how to help people that are visually impaired. So
we're all in this together.
I love it. It's one. You have been such an inspiration,
Thank you.
and I'm sure the viewers as well. In our last couple minutes, what about how can somebody reach you for you to provide this education, and any resources that you would recommend that if people do have any vision problems? First of all, they need to go to their doctor, and they need to have a dilated eye exam and really get on top of this quickly. And that goes for any eye condition.
Absolutely.
Whether it's any abnormality in vision should be checked right away.
Absolutely.
And then once that happens and they get diagnosed and say they do have RP, where can they turn in terms of assistance?
Well, again, I don't want to sound like I'm hogging things, but please have people contact me.
And your website, we'll put it on the show,
right,
so that when
right.
you see the show viewers, her website information will be there. So you don't have to remember it now, but we'll have it there.
Because it's not uncommon for people to call me. Usually it's not the visually impaired person themselves. It's a family member to say, my mom is I know she's losing her vision, and she's despondent.
Okay.
So
you can help.
I can help and say,
okay,
think about this, because what happens if you call the commission, they're going to say, well, you need to have a certificate of blindness. And again, that rattles people, because and if you call Mass Association for the Blind and Visually Impaired, you may be reeled in, so to speak, before you're ready. And again, I'm not saying you're ever ready, but I think it's really important that you talk to a peer counselor first, as opposed to go to the usual cast of characters.
Right. So you're a great beginning resource.
And again, I love being a resource.
That's wonderful. And you live the life, so you're relatable, and you're so positive that you give people hope. And so I love that. So I just want to thank you so much for taking the time to come here. And I'm totally going to have you back on the show, because I want to learn myself how to help people, and I'm sure there are some viewers out there that also want to learn. So we're definitely going to have you back. So,
can I say one more thing?
Absolutely.
Okay. So my walking exercise, which is called Walk Fit.
Okay.
We do it on Saturdays.
Okay.
I think we're going to do it through July. We do it either indoors at St. Vincent's Hospital on a Saturday morning, usually at 10:30.
Okay.
Or we do it at Elm Park. if the weather is fine.
Okay.
Now, when I say the weather is fine, because I have VIPs, visually impaired people coming, they need to arrange their transportation the day before Saturday. So if the weather forecast on Friday is for an inclement Saturday, even though like last week it turns out that the sun is out, I still have it indoors. I do indoors rather than outdoors.
Okay.
But
and where do they find the information on the walk fit? Is that on St. Vincent's website, or
no? It would be me again.
Okay, so they can just so we'll leave your website in that way. All right, great.
It would be me again.
Well, thank you
You're
so
welcome.
much. I was going to shake your hand, so I'm going to shake your hand.
Well, thank you. Using your words.
Thank you so much. Yes. At first I didn't, and then I remembered to use my words.
Use your words.
It reminds me, my daughter's always telling my grandson, use your words to tell me what you want.
Exactly.
So that's very important. So viewers, use your words. And I want to thank you again, and I'm going to have you back. And viewers, thank you again for tuning in. And next month, we are going to have Mike Anderson from the Montechusett Veterans Outreach here, and we're going to talk about services for veterans. So until then, remember to live your best life every day starting today. This is Sherrie Keating. Thank you for tuning in.